You'd think family would want you there for their big day. You'd think blood means something. But 3 months ago, my phone rang on a gray Thursday morning in Brooklyn, and my mother's voice, calm, clipped, told me I wasn't invited to my own brother's wedding. Not because we'd fought. Not because the guest list was too big. No, she said. It's just family, dear. Like that explained everything. Like I wasn't family. Like I wasn't his only sister. And here's the part you won't believe 2 months later. The same people who cut me out were begging me to save the wedding with my signature. They thought I'd be angry. They thought I'd cry or plead to be included. Instead, I went quiet. I booked a flight out of town, and I didn't tell anyone where I was going. And from that distance, I watched everything fall apart. They had no idea that my silence would hit harder than anything I could say. My name's Jenny. I'm 34, a senior credit advisor in Brooklyn. I built my career from the ground up. I've spent years cleaning up other people's messes for clients, for friends, and most of all, for my family. I have perfect credit, a steady income, and 0 debt. That's rare in my line of work, and in my family. It's like gold. Which is why they didn't just want me at that wedding, they needed me. Not for the photographs or the speeches, for the paperwork, for the clean financial record they'd been writing on for years without saying thank you. I used to think that was love, that being needed was the same thing as being valued. I don't think that anymore. Before I tell you what happened, I want you to imagine something. Imagine you've been the reliable one your whole life, the designated driver, the emergency contact, the one who bails everyone out. You give and give and give. Then one day, the people you've been holding up decide you're not worth inviting. They pop the champagne without you. They smile for the photos without you. And they only call back when the bills come due. That's where my story starts. And if you've ever been the backup plan in your own family, the one they keep in the shadows until they need you, stick around. Because what I did next wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel. But it was the first time I chose me over them. And it changed everything. Now, if you're watching this, do me a favor, hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. Not because I need the numbers, but because maybe someone else out there needs to hear this. To know it's okay to step away from the table when there's never been a seat for you. So, let's go back to the beginning. It was early. The kind of early where the city's still waking up, delivery trucks double parked, steam rising from the subway grates. I was buttoning my coat for work when my phone buzzed. Mom's name lit up the screen. Her voice was flat. Jenny, you're not invited to Mark's wedding. I actually laughed at first, waiting for the punchline. It's just family, dear. I stood there, staring at the dusty ficus in my window, wondering if I'd misheard. I am family, I said finally. She sighed, like I was making this harder than it needed to be. We've decided to keep it intimate. A second later, my phone vibrated again. Group text, Mark, my golden boy younger brother. Hey everyone, just confirming the guest list is tight. No extras. Hope you understand. No name, no direct mention. Just a public decree that I didn't belong. And here's the thing. It didn't even surprise me. Not really, this wasn't new. Mark was always the center of the family orbit. When he won awards, we had parties. When I got promoted last year, Mom forgot to call. When he needed help, I was there. When I needed anything, silence. But this was different. This was erasure, in real time. I sat on the edge of my bed, coffee cooling in my hand, reading that text over and over. No apology, no awkward excuse, just exclusion. I could have called. I could have fought. I could have shown up anyway. But something in me, something that had been ignored for years, finally spoke up. Leave. Not forever, not dramatically, just far enough to breathe without their voices in my ear. So that night, I opened my laptop and searched last-minute flights from NYC. I didn't know where I was going. Just, not here. The word Portland caught my eye. Misty, green, a place that didn't know me. I booked the ticket before I could talk myself out of it. And as the confirmation email hit my inbox, I felt the first flicker of something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. I left the next day. Didn't tell anyone. Didn't leave a note. Just packed a small suitcase, jeans, boots, 2 sweaters, and the scarf my Aunt Lucille had given me the Christmas before she died. The only one in the family who ever looked me in the eye and saw me fully. Lucille would have told me to go. She'd have made pancakes, squeezed my hand, and said, "Sometimes the best revenge is becoming impossible to ignore." The cab to JFK was silent. I stared out the window while the driver hummed to the radio. Outside, Brooklyn blurred into morning fog and wet asphalt. No one waved me off. No one even knew I was leaving. And that was the point. When the plane touched down in Portland 6 hours later, the sky was a soft, endless gray. The air was wet, crisp, like something was being rinsed clean. It didn't take long to find the inn I'd booked, an old converted Craftsman tucked behind a used bookstore, and a cafe that smelled like cinnamon and something floral. The woman at the front desk handed me a brass key and didn't ask any questions. My room had slanted ceilings, creaky floorboards, and a window that looked out onto a crooked street lined with trees half clothed in moss. I stood there for a long time, just breathing. That night, I didn't check my phone, didn't scroll through texts. I sat cross-legged on the worn rug, staring out at the flickering streetlight, listening to the creaks in the walls and the wind rattling against the old glass. And for the first time in what felt like years, no one needed anything from me. The next morning, I walked. No destination, just me and the wet sidewalks and the soft Portland drizzle. I passed coffee carts and vinyl shops and tucked away bookstores. No one looked at me like I was disappointing them. No one asked, "Have you heard from Mark?" or "Did you RSVP yet?" It was quiet, not just outside, but inside. Back home, my life had become a series of invisible support beams, holding up other people's plans, other people's emotions. When Mark was applying to college, I wrote his essays while he played video games. When Mom's birthday came around, I organized the dinner, booked the restaurant, ordered the cake while she praised Mark for remembering the candles. I skipped my own vacation to attend his law school graduation, sat in the third row, smiling through it all, while no one thanked me, not once. I wasn't the center of attention. I wasn't even on the edge. I was behind the scenes, setting the stage. But out here, in this new city, with its pale skies and quiet corners, I wasn't scaffolding anymore. I was just a woman on a sidewalk, sipping chai from a paper cup, invisible in the best possible way. And yet, curiosity is stubborn. On the third night, I opened the family group chat. It was still called Homebase, a name I had chosen years ago when we were pretending to be close. For a while, the thread had been mostly dead, but now it was buzzing. Mark had posted a photo of him and Serena in front of our parents' fireplace. Champagne flutes, big smiles. Caption: "Final venue deposit is in. Big day coming soon." He looked proud. She looked perfect. The kind of photo people repost on Instagram with #goals in the caption. Replies poured in. Mom sent a dozen heart emojis. Dad replied with a joke about walking Serena down the aisle if Mark got cold feet. Serena dropped a boomerang of her spinning in a white rehearsal dress. It looked like a dream. But I've learned that dreams curated online are usually hiding something. What stood out wasn't the smiles, it was the pace. Mom's messages were off, too frequent, like she was trying to fill a silence, replying to herself, double texting, correcting typos like someone desperate to keep the energy up. Then came the photo that made my stomach turn. a blurry image of our kitchen table, covered in receipts and notebooks, and what looked like a calculator. "Budget night, almost there," she wrote. No one responded. I leaned back in the armchair, the glow of my phone lighting up the quiet room, and for the first time in days, I felt something colder than sadness. They were nervous. The next day, another post, a picture of Mark and Serena on the back patio, laughing with wine glasses in hand. But my eyes went to the background. Through the open sliding door, I saw it, a whiteboard propped up on a chair. Zooming in, I caught a glimpse of numbers, some crossed out, some underlined, and one word written in all caps, deadline. Something was off, and I wasn't there to hold the pieces together. I should have felt guilty, but instead, I felt calm. Because for once, I wasn't in the middle of it. I wasn't the one doing emotional CPR while everyone else pretended everything was fine. They were spiraling, and I was just watching. By the 5th day, Portland felt like it had cracked something open in me. I wasn't healing, not yet, but I was hollowing out the rot quietly, breath by breath. The air here had a way of crawling under your skin, moss-covered sidewalks, coffee steam curling through bookstore windows, the slow drip of rain off overgrown eaves. You couldn't rush through Portland. You had to let it settle. And I did. I stopped checking the family thread. I stopped wondering if anyone missed me, because I knew the answer. But curiosity, it doesn't die easy. It was the 7th night when I gave in. I was curled up on a thrifted armchair in the inn's common room, sipping hot cider and half reading a mystery novel when my phone buzzed. I'd left notifications off, but muscle memory dragged my thumb across the screen. I opened the chat. Mark again, this time in a tuxedo store mirror. Fit check. Thoughts, fam. Serena replied with fire emojis. Some cousin dropped a thumbs up, but what was missing hit harder than anything they said. Mom didn't reply. The woman who used to jump into every photo comment like it was a stage silent. That's when I knew something was cracking beneath the surface. The next morning, Portland was all fog and chill. I threw on a coat, grabbed a croissant from the cafe downstairs, and wandered. The streets were slick with last night's rain. I found myself at a coastal trail Clara had recommended, just outside the city, mossy and wild, like something half forgotten. Clara was a florist/poet I'd met 2 days earlier. She'd caught me staring at a patch of late-blooming wildflowers and said, "Funny how nature keeps showing up even when no one claps." That line stuck with me. So did she. She had this way of making silence feel warm instead of empty. No questions I didn't want to answer. No assumptions. Just shared space, shared breath, shared quiet. That trail twisted along the edge of a cliff, wind in my hair, salty air in my lungs. And for a moment, it was just me and the sea. No weddings, no signatures, no guilt. Until my phone buzzed again. Not the family chat this time. Individual texts. One from Mom, one from Mark, then another, then 5 more. I didn't read them yet. I just held the phone in my hand like it was ticking. That night, back at the inn, I turned it on fully. 18 missed calls, 9 voicemails, 24 texts. They'd finally noticed my silence. And panic was setting in. First message, Jenny. Dear, just checking in. Hope you're safe. 3 hours later, we really need to talk. Please answer. Then, this isn't funny. We need your help. Then came Mark. Can you be an adult for once and call us back? This is serious. I didn't reply. I just kept scrolling. And then I saw the one that made my stomach clench. The venue needs the final payment by Friday, or they cancel. If you won't help for us, at least think about how this affects Serena. There it was, the truth. Not concern, not reconciliation, not remorse. Desperation. They didn't miss me. They missed my credit. I stared at that message, blinking once, twice, and I laughed. Not bitter, not angry, just tired. I'd always known they valued what I did more than who I was. But this made it official. I was their emergency parachute, the safety net, the backup plan. And when I finally cut the rope, they were falling. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't even vent to Clara or Mo or Devin, the musician who taught guitar to foster kids and made killer lentil stew. I just listened. Listened to the voicemails. Mom's voice started calm. Jenny, we just need your signature. You have the best credit in the family. The bank already flagged the loan without you. Then sharper, we supported you when you needed it. After college. When you changed jobs. Remember. Dad, more clipped. This is your family. We need you. Mark needs you. It's one signature. I paused. Let those words hang in the dark room like smoke. They'd forgotten the most important part. You don't get to erase someone and then demand their loyalty. They didn't invite me. They excluded me. Silently. Publicly. And now, when the foundation cracked, they expected me to step in and hold it up like I always had. But I didn't owe them that anymore. If they'd wanted my support, they should have remembered I existed when they were drawing up that guest list. So I did the one thing none of them expected. Nothing. No reply. No call. No panic. Just silence. Because silence, when it's earned, becomes its own kind of power. I went for a walk the next morning. The sky was moody, low, like it was holding its breath. I wandered past a row of food trucks and sat on a bench near a man playing the cello for no one. And while Serena was probably trying on her final fitting, and my parents were refreshing their bank app, I stared out at a coffee shop window and whispered to myself, I don't know you anymore. It felt like exhaling after holding my breath for a decade. They could beg, they could blame, but they built this wedding without me, and they could watch it collapse the same way. Without me, the morning after the voicemail storm, Portland was unusually clear. Sunlight threaded through the clouds like it had just remembered how. My room was quiet, except for the distant hum of a passing train and the soft clink of teacups downstairs. I didn't move right away. I lay there, eyes open, staring at the cracked ceiling, letting the quiet do what it does best, fill the space that chaos tries to consume. I thought about my mother's voice. Not the content, the tone. Not sadness, not love, not even guilt. It was panic wrapped in entitlement. We've always supported you. You owe us. The truth is, they never supported me. They tolerated me, used me, put my reliability on layaway and cashed it in when things got tight. Every job change I handled alone. Every breakup alone. Every small victory in my life, quietly shelved beneath Mark's big milestones. Their version of support was pretending to clap after I'd already left the stage. But this time, I hadn't even been invited. And yet, here they were calling, texting, spinning with the kind of urgency that only appears when someone realizes the crutch they've leaned on might not show up. It should have hurt. A few years ago, it might have. But now, it was almost clinical, like watching a fire in a house you no longer lived in. I got out of bed slowly, padded over to the window, and pulled the curtain back. Portland's skyline was soft, blurred at the edges. People were walking dogs, sipping coffee, going about their mornings without begging anyone for acknowledgement. I envied them. Then I realized I was one of them now. I made tea, sat at the small desk in my room, opened a blank page in my notebook, and I started writing. Not a response, not a letter. A list? Things I no longer accept. Being useful as a substitute for being loved. Being the emergency contact for people who forget my birthday. Conditional affection disguised as family loyalty. Guilt as a tool of manipulation. Apologies that only come after the plan fails. The list got longer. I didn't stop until the page was full. This wasn't revenge. This was a declaration, a shift, a reckoning with the role I'd played, and the quiet decision to never play it again. I looked at that list and felt something settle in my chest. Not heat, not rage, just clarity. That afternoon, Clara picked me up in her dented Subaru. She handed me a pastry wrapped in wax paper and said, "You look lighter." I didn't explain. She didn't ask. We drove to a farmer's market on the edge of town. I watched people sell things they'd made with their own hand: soap, bread, knitted scarves. No rush, no credit checks, no rehearsals for Instagram perfection. That night, we sat on her porch, drinking wine out of chipped mugs. She told me about how she left corporate law after her father tried to will her into managing his estate. How she bought a flower shop with her severance. "I walked away from the version of me they wanted," she said. "Best thing I ever did." I smiled. "Yeah." She nodded. "Because now when people ask who I am, I answer like it's my name, not their investment." Her words sat with me long after I walked back to the inn. In my room, I plugged in my phone again. I didn't open any texts. I didn't check voicemail. I opened the family group chat for the last time that week. The newest message was a photo Mark at the altar. Empty chairs behind him. It was supposed to be a rehearsal shot, I think, but even in the image, you could feel the tension. Serena wasn't smiling. Dad wasn't even looking at the camera. And on the kitchen wall behind them, a noteboard with red marker. Friday, final payment due. The timestamp. That morning. They were running out of time. I turned off the screen, folded the notebook page with my list, and slipped it into my bag. And then, slowly, without drama, I deleted every voicemail one by one. They wanted my signature. They wanted me to swoop in, save the day, then fade into the background like a quiet little savior. But I wasn't theirs anymore. I was mine. My revenge didn't look like fireworks. There were no screaming matches, no social media exposés, no dramatic public scenes. I didn't show up at the rehearsal dinner in a red dress just to cause a scene. I didn't send out any guests who's not paying emails to the guests. I simply did nothing. And let me tell you, nothing has weight when people expect you to fold. The power wasn't in what I said. It was in what I withheld. My silence was a scalpel. And back home, they were bleeding out. Each morning, the messages multiplied. Mark shifted from irritated big brother energy to full-blown crisis mode. His texts had no structure, just frantic demands. "Jenny, this is insane. We're out of time. You're literally ruining the wedding." Mom rotated through emotional tones like she was auditioning sweet guilt, cutting shame, then flat-out pleading. "Think about your brother. Think about Serena's family. This is humiliating. Jenny." I didn't respond. Not because I was being cruel, but because they'd built a life around the assumption that I always would. And for the first time, I was letting them find out what it looked like when I didn't. From the outside, it probably looked like I was being petty. But silence isn't always petty. Sometimes it's precision, a clear boundary drawn where none had ever existed before. And the cracks were finally showing. On the 9th day of my Portland escape, I checked the family group chat not out of interest, but curiosity, like watching a house collapse from far away. There was a post from Serena's cousin, a screenshot of a Facebook story Serena had deleted within the hour. A blurry boomerang of a bridal hanger. The caption read, "Sometimes love isn't enough when lies get too loud." No tags, no emojis. Then Mom posted in the group a photo of Dad sitting at the dining room table, surrounded by stacks of papers. His glasses were slipping down his nose, his expression hollow. The caption tried for humor, making it work, one penny at a time. No likes, no replies. Not even a pity reaction from one of the distant cousins. That silence. That wasn't just awkward. That was social decay. Public image crumbling. And it was only beginning. Clara and I were sitting outside a food truck that day, jackfruit tacos, fennel slaw, some weird sparkling hibiscus thing she insisted I try when she noticed I was quieter than usual. "Bad news?" she asked. "Just watching a fire I didn't start," I said, shrugging. "But it used to be your house." "Exactly." She handed me a napkin and said, "Wipe your face. You're still glowing." We both laughed, but underneath it, something deeper settled. I wasn't angry. I wasn't triumphant. I was calm. Because I hadn't sabotaged anything. I hadn't burned the dress, canceled the caterer, or badmouthed anyone. I didn't even say no. I just didn't say yes. And in that absence, everything they'd built on assumptions, on borrowed money, on borrowed loyalty was caving in. 3 days before the wedding, I got a voicemail I'll never forget. "Mom," her voice low and fraying at the edges. "Jenny, we're in trouble. The venue said without your signature. The payment doesn't go through. Serena's parents are furious. Your father is—" She trailed off. There was shuffling in the background. A sharp sigh. "You've made your point. You're angry. We understand. But your brother's wedding is falling apart. This is bigger than your feelings." Ah, there it was. The thesis. The core belief they'd always carried, that my feelings were extra. That my presence was assumed, and my absence was dramatic. That when I drew boundaries, I was making a point, instead of making peace. And yet, the wedding was 3 days away. The venue hadn't been paid. The bank had flagged the application, and the only person who could fix it was no longer playing the role. I didn't call back. Instead, I went to the beach. Clara, Mo, Devin, and I took a spontaneous drive to Cannon Beach. The sky was thick with clouds, and the wind whipped around us like something wild. I stood on the shoreline, wrapped in a borrowed coat, watching the waves slam against the rocks. No phone, no signal, no obligation. Back in Brooklyn, I imagined my mother pacing the kitchen, calculator in hand, muttering to herself, Mark scrolling through vendors, Serena crying in the guest room. They had created a fantasy, pinned it on my signature, and now the glue was melting. The next morning, another update hit the group chat. A Facebook post from Serena's mother, clearly not meant for us, but screenshot and dropped into the chat by mistake. To those asking about Mark and Serena's wedding, it has been postponed indefinitely. We appreciate your understanding during this difficult time. That phrase, postponed indefinitely. It was a clean break in a long, fractured performance. The group chat exploded. Cousins asking questions, aunts confused. No one had answers. And then, from Mark, one final text. "Sorry, everyone. Venue fell through last minute. Appreciate your support." That was it. No accountability. No explanation. Just a shrug in digital form. I didn't reply. Instead, I made banana pancakes with Clara and Mo. Devin played guitar. Someone spilled syrup all over the table, and we laughed until it hurt. That night, I lit a candle on the windowsill of my tiny inn room. The scent was cedar and sage. And I breathed, not as the forgotten sister, not as the fixer, as the woman who finally let go of the script and watched the whole production fall without her. You'd think after the wedding collapsed, the noise would stop. But it didn't. If anything, it got louder. More voicemails, more texts, more attempts to twist the silence into guilt. The tone shifted overnight. No more polite checking in, no more veiled sympathy. Now it was fire and frost. "I hope you're happy," Mom's message said. "Everything fell apart. Serena's family is humiliated. Mark is devastated. This is on you, Jenny. All you had to do was answer. One signature, one call. I listened to it while sitting on the floor of my room, legs crossed, a cup of tea in my hands. The voicemail played, her voice shaking not with sorrow, but with fury barely dressed in disappointment. But the part that hit hardest wasn't what she said. It was what she didn't? No, I'm sorry. No, we hurt you first. No, we should have invited you. Just a verdict. And I was the one on trial. I paused the message, let the silence fill the room again. Outside, it was raining softly, the kind of Portland drizzle that felt more like fog with weight. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel angry. I just felt finished. Because even in the ashes, they still didn't see it. I hadn't sabotaged the wedding. I hadn't called the venue. I hadn't canceled the florist. I hadn't posted anything online. I hadn't said a word. I had simply stopped being available. And that was enough to bring the whole thing down. What does that tell you? It tells you they built their future on a foundation they assumed I'd hold. A financial safety net they never asked to borrow because they expected it. My worth was measured in silence and reliability. My absence, a betrayal. But here's the truth. They couldn't face, I didn't leave the family. They left me a long time ago. They left me when I was 12, and Mark got a new bike while I got told to stop asking. They left me when I planned Mom's birthday dinner, and she thanked Mark for picking the perfect cake. They left me when I got a raise, and no one noticed. They left me when I became useful instead of loved. So when the house they built on borrowed favor collapsed, I wasn't the wrecking ball. I was just gone. A few days passed in strange, golden quiet. No texts, no new voicemails. The group chat sat still, like a room no one dared enter. Clara noticed the shift. One night on her porch, she passed me a mug of warm cider and said, "You look like someone who walked out of a storm and remembered how to stand." I smiled. Something like that. She nodded. "You didn't burn it down, but you let it fall. And that's harder." She was right. Destruction is easy. Letting go is the real work. Later that week, my cousin Amber texted me directly something no one else had done in weeks. "I don't know what happened exactly," she wrote, "but your mom was crying on the porch when we showed up. Some guys from the venue came by, too. It was bad." I didn't reply, but I could picture it. My mother standing in pearls and pressed slacks, trying to maintain control while the walls caved in. My father pacing, muttering about how banks are unreliable. Mark scowling because someone had finally told him no. Serena packing up her things in quiet, graceful fury. And me, sitting by a fogged-up window in a Portland inn, sketching the outline of a pine tree and sipping lavender tea. That contrast, it was peace. And still, no apology, no realization, just empty silence that now belonged to them, not me. Because I was done being the scapegoat. I was done being the emotional accountant, the emotional translator, the emotional shield. I was just done. One evening, Clara texted, "Bonfire at the Cliffs tonight. Bring something weird and something warm." I showed up with lemon cupcakes I'd bought from the cafe downstairs and a thrifted blanket with a hole in the middle. The wind whipped along the coast. The fire cracked. Devin strummed slow chords on his guitar. Mo passed around a flask of something too strong and too sweet. We sat in mismatched chairs, wrapped in mismatched lives, and no one asked me to explain myself. No one asked what went wrong. They just let me be there. And around that fire, I realized this was the family I'd chosen. Not the one who expected, the one who accepted. Later that night, walking home under the misty stars, I thought about the phrase Mom had used in her voicemail. "You've made your point." But I hadn't. Because this wasn't about making a point. This was about making a change. A permanent one. And that change wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel. It was clear. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to fight. I didn't need to defend. I just needed to walk away and keep walking. The voicemail came at 2:13 a.m. I didn't see it until the next morning. The rain had cleared, and for once, Portland looked golden sunlight slipping between the clouds, turning sidewalks into mirrors. I opened my eyes slowly, still warm under linen sheets, and saw the notification blinking on my screen. My mother's name, again. I didn't reach for it right away. I got up, brushed my teeth, made tea. Only when the mug was warm in my hands did I press play. Her voice came through soft, strained. "Jenny, I don't know if you'll even hear this. I guess I just wanted you to know we're home now. The wedding's off. Serena moved her things out last night. Mark hasn't spoken to us all day." A pause. I could hear fabric rustling, a chair creaking, her breath catching. "Your father's pretending he's fine. You know how he is. And Mark, he's blaming everyone. But mostly you." Another pause. "And I guess I am too. Even though I know that's not fair." That line caught me. I stood there, frozen, waiting for the next sentence to correct it, to undo the weight. It never came. I keep thinking, if you were here, maybe things would have gone differently. Maybe you would have figured it out. No apology, no accountability, just sadness. And that's when it hit me. Even now, even at the end of it all, I was still their safety net in theory. Even stripped of obligation, they believed I held the key to fixing what had fallen apart. But I didn't feel guilty. Not this time. Because I knew something they hadn't figured out yet. I wasn't responsible for what they built on borrowed trust. And I wasn't going to be their architect anymore. I stood by the window, looking out over the street, watching as people passed by with their dogs, their coffee, their groceries and plans, living, really living. My phone buzzed again, a new notification. Mark had posted a photo. No caption, just a shot of him standing alone on a beach. The tide low, the sky overcast. He was facing the water, hands in his pockets, hair blown back by the wind. For the first time, I didn't feel anything, not anger, not pity, just distance, like we lived on different maps, and maybe we always had. I didn't like the photo. I didn't comment, I didn't text. I didn't owe him or any of them a response. Because this wasn't about punishment. This was about peace. And I had finally found mine. That afternoon, Clara texted, "Fire pit tonight. Bring someone weird and something sweet." I brought brownies from the cafe and a thrifted scarf Mo had left in my room weeks ago. We sat under a navy sky, flames licking the wind, laughter scattered between gulps of red wine and bad harmonica solos. At one point, Clara leaned over and said, "Hey, we're really glad you showed up." That line hit harder than any voicemail ever had. Because it didn't ask for anything. It didn't carry a transaction or a tether. It just acknowledged presence. No performance, no expectation, just glad you're here. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't healing from them anymore. I was growing without them. Later that night, I walked home alone. The sky hung heavy with stars, the streets glistening from an earlier rain. I didn't check my phone. I didn't think about what they might say next. Instead, I thought about Iceland. A few days earlier, I'd used my flight credit, not to go back to Brooklyn, but to go forward. Iceland in February, cold, quiet, and bold. A place I'd always wanted to go but never allowed myself to dream of without someone else to go with. This time, it would just be me. And that wasn't lonely. That was freedom. I left a note on the nightstand of the inn before I checked out the next morning. Just a quiet thank you, a trace, a goodbye to a version of me that had needed shelter. The woman I was now. She didn't beg for belonging. She didn't trade silence for acceptance. She didn't erase herself to keep things peaceful. She knew who she was and who she wasn't. She was no longer their contingency plan, no longer their unspoken plan B. She was her own plan A. So if you're still watching, let me ask you something. Have you ever been the quiet one, the fixer, the forgotten? Have you ever given everything and been written out of the story anyway? If you have, comment, I hear you, because someone should. Because you don't owe anyone access to your peace just because they once knew your number. And if they built their plans on the hope you'd show up, and you didn't, that's not betrayal. That's the beginning of your story. And it's about time you wrote it in your own ink.